So, welcome back to another video. Today I wanted to take a quick moment to talk about a series that's really been meaning a lot to me as we enter into this new year of 2022. And the game that I've been really playing, or rather the series of games that I've really been playing so far into the year, is Final Fantasy. Now there's two Final Fantasy games that I'm currently playing, and I'll give a quick disclaimer. There's only 3 Final Fantasy games that I've ever played. And the first Final Fantasy game, and actually out of the 3 games that I've ever played, 2 of them are right here, 7 Remake and 15. Now the first Final Fantasy game that I've ever played was Final Fantasy 13. And I really enjoyed that game. That game was not perfect by any means. I didn't even beat the game. I only got the first couple of hours into the game, but I really enjoyed it. I personally really enjoyed sort of the linear storytelling of the game. At the time, I was playing a lot of Fallout 3, a lot of Fallout 4. Actually, at that time, I'd only been playing Fallout 3. Fallout 4 hadn't come out yet. And so getting into an RPG that had a story to tell, but was also linear, was actually something that was quite new to me, that I personally really enjoyed. And so when I was playing Final Fantasy 13, that really didn't bother me, that basically it was a hallway, for all the time that I played it, it was basically a straight hallway, the beginning, the end, and you just continued to do that in different areas. So that really didn't bother me. But one thing that did bother me was they kind of thrust you into this world where you don't quite understand everything that's going on, and you're just kind of expected to know some of these terms like the l'Cie and the false l'Cie and all these sort of things, and they don't really take the time to explain it in the beginning, so you're left very confused. Everyone's talking like you know everything that's going on, and you're just kind of expected to roll with it. And supposedly later on in the game they explain some of these things, or you at least get used to it and you start to piece things together. But it's certainly not a very enjoyable experience when you don't quite understand everything that's going on. Now, that brings me to these 2 games here. Like I said, I didn't finish Final Fantasy 13, but recently I revisited the game, and I enjoyed getting back into it, and just kind of feeling very nostalgic in the first Final Fantasy experience that I've ever had. And so I really enjoyed that, but I don't think that I'll actually be completing that game, because while I did really enjoy the combat, I really enjoyed the linearness of it, so that way I can sort of really immerse myself into the story. The story itself was just not that interesting. The characters were not that interesting, and so that's kind of my experience with my first Final Fantasy game. Now, later on, I got back into Final Fantasy when I picked up Final Fantasy 15. Now, this is the deluxe edition. It has the slipcover on it and some really cool art on the front and on the back. And then inside, we have some booklets here, as well as the, let's see here, the Kingsglaive movie. And that movie really helps fill in the gaps on some of the things that you're not quite understanding with the game itself. And you'll see that this side is actually empty because that's what I have in my PS4 at the moment. But, this game is also not perfect. It's similar in 13 in that you don't quite understand everything that's going on, but the story right away has really gripped me in this, and I've taken the time to beat the game, to really enjoy it, and there's just so many good things I can say about it. I personally really loved 15, and the combat in it, it's not turn-based, as the traditional Final Fantasy sense. It's basically an action RPG, real-time action, but it's a lot of fun. And just the ability to warp between different areas, the quick action, being able to hold down the attack button to chain different attacks, and being able to go up into the air, and basically use your magic and have your teammates with you to do various team actions and things like that. It's a really fun game. Beautiful graphics, stunning graphics. And I really enjoyed the characters and the music. The music in Final Fantasy 15 is personally my favorite. I've taken some time to listen to the soundtrack of the other Final Fantasy games. While I haven't played those, I've taken the time to listen to them, and I really, really enjoy the music in Final Fantasy 15. Personally, it's my favorite. There's some really good songs in Final Fantasy 7 that I really enjoy, but 15 personally takes the cake for me, especially the battle music. And gosh, I could gush for days about the sort of boss battle with the Leviathan. That was probably the highlight for me personally in the game. There's a lot of fun moments, but something about that particular battle, I grinned from ear to ear, and I told myself, this is why I love gaming. This is why I do what I do, and I enjoy the PlayStation. I enjoy the experience, and not so much specifically with the PlayStation, but I just enjoy the whole experience of what I have in front of me. And so yeah, that particular boss battle just really brought a lot of good emotions for me, and it was just a lot of fun. The action, like I said, is really good. The combat, phenomenal. Being able to warp to different places, and using different abilities, and so many different weapons that you can use, and different play styles that you can use. I really, really, really enjoyed Final Fantasy 15, and if you haven't given it a shot, if you're one of the people that has read the reviews online, has read the opinions of other people online, and maybe you've seen gameplay of it and you just maybe thought, that's not really my cup of tea, I challenge you to try out this game, because if you give it a shot with an open mind, don't expect too much from it. Don't expect it to be the RPG to end all RPGs, because it certainly is not. While I love this game, it certainly has its flaws, certainly has its kind of weak areas, some moments where you just don't really care what's going on. But if you give this game a shot, you will be very glad that you did, because it's a lot of fun. It is an absolute blast. Now it basically brings me to the next and last Final Fantasy game that I've personally played, and that is Final Fantasy VII Remake. Now this is a phenomenal game. Graphics are stunning. The music is also amazing, and I've mentioned it in a previous video, but the opening to this game is probably my favorite opening in any game that I've played. Not so much specifically in this, in the remake itself. The PlayStation 1 opening is, granted, they're basically the same, graphically enhanced and everything, but just the opening in general, and just the being thrust into the action, it's a lot of fun. The music is amazing. Now, this game, I haven't quite beat it yet, but I am quite a bit of a ways into the game. I only have a couple of chapters left. And no spoilers here or anything like that, but it's a lot of fun. Really grips you into it, and I'm really looking forward to beating this game, and looking forward to the next, to the other parts, to basically complete the Final Fantasy VII experience as a whole. Because playing this remake is my first experience with Final Fantasy VII, and this remake is so good that it makes me want to go back and play the original PlayStation 1. Despite the graphics, despite the limitations of the console and everything like that, it really makes me want to go back and experience this game in its original form on the PlayStation 1, with just everything that entails. And so I really enjoy this game. Now the combat in this, maybe because I played Final Fantasy 15 first, and I basically beat the game, and I spent a lot of time with this game, I have found that personally I enjoy the combat in 15 more than 7. The being able to warp around and phase through different objects and things like that is really fun, and keeps the action very fast paced in 15. To whereas in 7 the combat is good, and if there was no Final Fantasy 15, if the combat was different in this would probably be my favorite combat in any sort of RPG. But just because I had the combat in 15 and how I personally enjoy it, I really like the combat in 15 more than 7. And also, I personally, in 15, I didn't upgrade my skill tree to be able to take control of the other characters. I really wanted to just let the AI be the AI, and I only played as Noctis. in 15. And so, maybe the experience is a little bit better being able to jump between the different characters, but personally, I like to just have the one character and kind of simplify things. And so with this game, right off the bat, you're able to, switch between characters, and you kind of have to be able to get certain enemies, because it doesn't seem like the AI prioritizes actually defeating the enemies. It's mainly you doing most of the work to defeat the enemies. Your AI does do, a relatively good job of fighting them, at least weakening them so you can deliver the final blow, but at least in my experience, I'm sort of forced to have to jump between the different characters, and that's an element that I personally don't really enjoy. But that being said, this game is still, it's a lot of fun, and the story it grips you right away, and it's much easier to follow this game than any of the other, well, the only other two Final Fantasy games that I've played. Now, of course, once I actually get through, and get to be able to play some of the other ones, then, my opinions might change as far as, the story and some other ones I've gravitated towards, or maybe the combat and other ones I really like. But as it stands so far, out of the ones that I've played, I'm having so much fun with these, and I've been putting in a lot of hours into these two games. So, guys, that's really all that I wanted to kind of bring to the table today and go over with Final Fantasy. I mean, Final Fantasy is a series that really does mean a lot to me. Granted, I've only played 3 games out of the 15 different games that they have, and none of the spin-offs or the sequels like 13-2 and 10-2, but yeah, I out of the games that I've played, I feel like I've picked really good ones. Or at least I've been able to find something that I really enjoy out of the ones that I've played. And so, that being said, this is a series that I really see myself playing a lot more this year, and really being able to jump into and enjoy some of the older entries into the series, and getting into just different universes, and being able to sort of escape into a fantasy world with different elements, and different magic elements, and different styles of combat, and just different backstories to different characters, and things like that, and the boss battles. I mean, the boss battles in 15 is just phenomenal, and 7 has some really good ones as well, but for me personally, 15 so far is the best one that I've played. Granted, again, I'm saying it's not perfect. I know there's a lot of hate for the game, which I feel is a little bit unwarranted, but personally, it's my personal favorite out of the ones I've played so far. So that being said, guys, like I said, I just wanted to hop on real quick and just talk about my thoughts of Final Fantasy in 2022 and my personal experience with it as I jump into this new year, and diving deeper into these games and playing them more than I ever have. And so, with that being said, I will catch you guys in the next one, and looking forward to a lot more Final Fantasy, not just in 2022, but moving forward in all the years to come. So I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.